The first thing you need to know is that it didn't start with some big dramatic standoff. No flashing lights or breaking news ticker, just a faint buzzing from the overhead lights in courtroom 6A and the sound of cheap shoes scuffing linoleum. The morning docket was full of the usual procedural filler, but when item 14 popped up, the room shifted. Not because of the charge, but because of who was sitting there at the defense table. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reed, the man with a chest full of medals and one leg less than most. He wasn't in uniform that day. No dress blues, no bars and stripes. Just a dark gray suit that fit like it had been sewn around the titanium prosthetic he wore in place of his right leg. His crutches leaned quietly next to him, like obedient soldiers. His file was closed on the table, untouched. But Judge Helen Traz didn't see a hero from her bench. No, to her, he was just another disruption in her perfectly measured courtroom. Staff Sergeant Reed, she started, voice cold enough to chill the brass. I trust your attorney has informed you that this is a formal civilian proceeding. That means military accolades don't exempt you from the rule of law. Reed didn't blink, didn't even nod, just looked her dead in the eyes. Calm, still, like a man who knew the terrain even if he didn't like the lay of it. Behind him, the gallery was sparse. A few vets in wrinkled jackets, family members whose expressions had hardened from years of waiting, even a former field medic who still carried a limp. Traz turned toward the prosecutor, clearly ready to get this over with. The charge? Contempt of a federal directive. Sounded small, harmless even, but what sat behind it wasn't. See, Marcus Reed had refused to vacate a community shelter after a city contractor ordered it cleared. The shelter was slated for demolition, another casualty in the war of real estate profits, disguised as progress. They wanted to build luxury apartments. You know, the kind marble countertops, valet trash, zero conscience. But on the night, they came with the papers and the pressure. Reed chained himself to a rusted heating pipe, 30 homeless veterans all around a man. He didn't move. For 6 hours. When the police finally arrived, he didn't throw a punch, didn't raise his voice. Just whispered, not again. Not one more sleeping on concrete. Judge Traz leaned in, her mouth tight, like the words tasted sour. You're not being tried for compassion, Sergeant, she said. You're here because you disobeyed a lawful order. Then she smirked, tilted her head like she was inspecting something beneath her. Though I must say, doing it while barely able to walk, that was a choice. And the whole courtroom, even the HVAC system, seemed to stop breathing for a beat. Reed didn't say a word, but his jaw flexed like a warning shot. He wasn't mad. Not yet. Because this war he was about to fight, yeah, it wasn't with bullets anymore. It was truth. And it was coming fast. Then the weirdest thing happened. A woman in the back mid-30s, tired eyes, a V8 pin on her lapel, stood up. Just stood. Said nothing. A beat later, a man in an old Navy cap followed. Then another. And another. Until the gallery was standing like a field of upright headstones. No noise, no slogans, just presence. Traz didn't like that. Not one bit. This is a court of law, not a theater, she barked. Sit down, or I will clear the gallery. But no one moved. And still, Reed hadn't said a damn word. Finally, his lawyer Michael Wexler, guy looked like he wore loafers to bed, stood up. Your Honor, with all respect, the language used toward my client was... Counselor, Traz cut him off. Proceed. Reed reached out, laid a calm hand on Wexler's arm. I've got this, he whispered. And then, with no fanfare, no background music, Marcus Reed stood. One leg, no crutches. The metal of his prosthetic clicked against the courtroom floor with this kind of sharp, surgical rhythm. He didn't face the judge. He turned to the gallery. I was 23 when I lost this leg, he started. Sanong District, Helmand Province. I watched a 19-year-old Marine bleed out next to me. No time to cry. 10 more wounded. One bird inbound. He paused, finding balance physical, emotional. I didn't lose my leg in a car wreck or bar fight. I lost it carrying a kid younger than my little brother out of a compound full of fire and screaming. Judge Traz slammed her gavel. Sergeant Reed, you are not authorized to address the gallery. He turned to her, slowly, and gave her a look. The kind of look that isn't loud but still slices right through steel. I stayed silent, he said, because I believe respect is earned through action, not argument. But don't mistake silence for surrender. You could have heard a heartbeat drop in that room. I came here ready to answer for what I did. But I didn't come alone. I carry every man and woman I couldn't save. Every brother I buried. Every night, I lie awake hearing them breathe their last. He gestured toward the back of the room, where a man in a wheelchair held the brim of his hat like it was his only anchor. I stood in that shelter because no one else would. Because they mattered. Because I swore never again. Not in Afghanistan. Not in America. And that was when it stopped being her courtroom and started becoming his. Traz lifted her gavel again, tapped it twice. This time, it didn't sound like authority. It sounded like habit. Mr. Reed, she said stiffly, you will address this court through your legal counsel from here on out. But Reed had already done what he came to do. The words? They weren't for her. Outside, reporters huddled around an old TV on wheels that someone had wheeled into the courthouse hallway. The stream was choppy, but clear enough to catch the moment. Reed standing tall, one leg and all heart. Inside, someone whispered, "Shelter the veterans." Traz tried to regain her grip. "Let the record show the defendant spoke out of turn," she said, "and that any implication that military service excuses unlawful conduct will not be tolerated." Wexler rose again. "With all due respect, Your Honor, we're not asking for a military exception. We're asking for a moral one." Traz didn't like that. This is not a morality trial. But it is a test, Wexler shot back, of priorities, of dignity, of what happens when a society forgets the people it once sent to die for it. He looked at Reed. "You wore a uniform once. Today, you wear a suit. But your mission's the same." Someone in the second row stood. A woman in a red jacket. She held up a photo. "This was my brother," she said. "He died overseas. When I saw Marcus refusing to leave those men, I saw him again. Not because they knew each other, but because Marcus remembered what our government forgot." Then she just handed the photo to the clerk and walked out. 10 others followed. No slogans. No applause. Just truth. And silence. A silence louder than any verdict.